Welcome back, guys. Ben here, and today we are back with part 6 of the Last Caretaker lore explored, and this is where we read through all the data logs that we collect while we're out exploring the world and read them all out for you, so those of you that like to listen to it while you're playing or doing something else, or just like to hear it and then we can kind of talk about it afterwards, this is for you. If you've missed the previous logs, then, like I said, there's 5 videos. They'll be in a playlist linked in the description below. And I'll also leave a link to the playlist for our Let's Play if you want to see the game and see our playthrough of that so far. But this is... I'm currently just filling up with oil at the oil refinery. And I thought, well, we've got a few more notes unlocked now, so it feels like a good time to record another episode of this. So sit back, relax, like, comment, subscribe. This is Lore Explored with the Last Caretaker. So with this one, we do have a couple of updates to some, as you can see here with the little white dots, if you are watching this and not just listening. Some of the existing data logs that we've already read out in previous episodes have had new entries added to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this one off by reading those new entries. Not going to reread the whole entry. I did and ah about this, but we've already read out the initial entries already. Don't want to be doubling over it again, so we're just going to read the new updated ones and then go from there. So this first one is Jacob's Stars. Page 7. Starproof. July 19th, 2005. At the time, losing Anna felt like the worst thing a man could bear. I was wrong. The worst thing is watching the world continue as if she never existed, as if her life was only a number that got rounded away. Opening the capsule changed Jacob. He looked at the seed the way starving people looked at food. Then he studied me in silence, deciding I was part of an old world he wanted to leave behind. Whatever he took with him into the night, it wasn't hope. It was a decision. Later, I found the papers. Not proper documents. Loose notes, torn edges. Some had gotten soaked, then dried stiff. His handwriting appeared in some places. In other areas, he wrote lines printed in block letters, maybe copied from a machine, a label, or a warning message. He didn't trust himself enough to remember it all correctly. One page held only handwritten numbers. A equals 5.038, parenthesis 2. C equals 13.772, parenthesis 12. And Z equals 6. Under them, one line. A blueprint. A recipe. Something meant to make people better than people. Then the last page. The one that made my hand shake. Printed in hard block letters, and not in Jacob's handwriting, was a message. A warning that pleaded for a final mercy. Do not let this reach the stars. If used, it will spread. If sent, it will be copied. Preserve, or end it here. Final Anthem. The last voice. When the last echoes faded, he closed his eyes and nodded. He leaned toward the microphone and whispered, "It is done." Then he made his way off stage. 2 weeks later, he passed away. Now every time a rocket lands at Moses Ascend, his voice returns. His body may be gone, but his spirit endures. To this day, he is still victorious. Ascend codes. Format for mission logs. Appendix 1, Dark Ascents. Not all launches are logged through the Ascend system. Black Site, experimental, or autonomous missions may omit standard registration. These are sometimes referred to as Dark Ascents. They leave no public code trail, may use falsified or blank headers, and often surface later in fragmented data logs with status UND. Example, -- 20941102 -- DSX UND. FS20472, internal system log, Excerpt 9 out of 9. Caretaker unit CKT-731, log 73, conditional wake. Timestamp 2104, 1107, 2114. Wake interval triggered, 10-year mark reached. System boot, core module stabilizing. Scan result, environment unchanged. Human input, none. Check mission relevance, null. Comment flag, no action. Returning to standby. Status, dormant loop enabled. Next wake scheduled, plus 10 years. Elena's future, love beyond endings. 19th of November, 2147. I was sealing bulkhead 6 today when the realization settled in. It didn't feel like a jolt. It felt like a soft click into place. We are the end of the line. Only 47 of us remain, and there are no viable embryos. No fertility. No future plans. Only routine. Colony's automated systems will outlast us by decades, maybe centuries. I think about the caretakers sometimes. About Earth. If any are still operational, maybe they'll figure something out. Maybe they'll grow someone new. Maybe not. Either way, the planet doesn't need us anymore. We came to space believing we were saving humanity. We didn't realize we were becoming its final record. The archive is complete. It just needs to be read by something or someone that comes after us. Dial attempt. Intercept messages. Intercept ID CHFLT leg 0001. Node New Terra Residential Comms Spur R14. Channel outbound legacy dial attempt. Policy flag non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile young adult 18 to 25 new arrival probable recent evac crew. Emotional state relief with grief overlay. Guilt suppression evident. Intent summary one-way proof of life declaration. Explicit rejection of reciprocal contact.
Dad? No, sorry. I'm sorry. If someone answers, don't. I just wanted to say I made it. That's all. I made it.
Analysis note. Subject opens with parental address, then self-corrects, indicating internalized compliance and fear of response. Message functions as a one-way memorial. Survival declared. Connection refused. The paradox is stable across the clip-seeking reality. I made it, while rejecting verification, don't answer, suggesting hope is being used as sedation rather than communication. Clean signal and monitoring beep imply supervised infrastructure. This was not a clandestine call, but a prohibited act occurring inside order. Disposition archived. Exception chain incomplete. Dial attempt 2. Node New Terra, Service Corridor Comms Spur S-03. Channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile adult 30 to 50 years old, station staff, probable education/admin/support role. Emotional state, chronic loneliness with quiet defiance. Resignation dominant. Intent summary. Confession and apology used as self-stabilization, voice sent outward to resist psychological collapse.
I keep calling old numbers. They tell us not to. But silence feels worse than being wrong. Sorry if this bothers you. I'll hang up soon.
Analysis note. Subject demonstrates full awareness of policy. They tell us not to, yet continues indicating voluntary non-compliance motivated by emotional necessity rather than ignorance. The phrasing frames silence as the primary threat, worse than error, suggesting the call functions as a coping ritual, not communication. Delivery is steady and tired, absent acute distress, consistent with long-term deprivation of interpersonal contact. Signal shows compression and light static with corridor ambience, implying routine infrastructure use rather than covert transmission. Prohibited behavior has normalized into quiet habit within official order. Disposition archived. Auto-retention conflict. Dial attempt number 3. Node New Terror, maintenance alcove, line M-11. Channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, teen/young adult, 16 to 30 years old. Unassigned resident, probable low duty or restricted access. Emotional state, fear of confirmation. Acute fragility with self-protective restraint. Intent summary. Controlled near contact used to preserve hope without risking verification. Request for silence as emotional containment.
If you're still there, please don't answer. I don't think I could survive the proof.
Analysis note. Subject's request for non-response indicates a paradoxical coping strategy, maintaining the possibility of connection while avoiding confirmation that could destabilize them. The phrasing "survive the proof" suggests recent exposure to mental health warnings and internalization of contact as psychologically hazardous. Whisper delivery with long pauses and audible breathing implies concealment and shame. The quiet environment supports a clandestine attempt rather than routine misuse. This is not outreach. It is self-regulation through ritualized, almost communication, consistent with systems that teach citizens to fear their own longing. Disposition quarantined, self-harm, risk flag. Dial attempt 4. Node New Terror, public atrium display bay A-02. Channel outbound. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, adult, 25 to 45 years old, resident/staff, long tenured, probable clinic/program participant. Emotional state, controlled bitterness, grief converted to analysis. Intent summary. Documents perceived coercion via comfort programming. Records dissent in private form.
They showed us a simulation of Earth today. Clean skies, stable oceans, birds you can't hear through glass. They said it was for comfort. It didn't feel like comfort. It felt like training us to accept what we'll never touch again.
Analysis note. Subject frames the simulation as behavioral conditioning rather than relief, indicating advanced skepticism of institutional morale initiatives. Delivery is slow and precise, suggesting emotional containment rather than impulsive distress. Audio begins in a shared space, faint chatter, chair scrape, then transitions to privacy, door closure. Consistent with a caller attempting deniable expression under surveillance norms. This call functions as a record of psychological harm performed without visible violence. Comfort as compliance training. Disposition archived. Content flagged. Morale risk. Dial attempt 5. Node New Terror. Training quarters comms spur T-08. Channel outbound. Policy flag. Non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile. Older teen/young adult 16 to 28 years old. Training track resident. Probable education/crew pipeline. Emotional state. Tender seriousness. Stable effect with underlying dread. Intent summary. Moral reminder intended for an unknown listener. Preserves agency language under narrowing choice regimes.
If this number belongs to anyone, please don't forget how it felt to choose. Not the big choices they celebrate, the small ones. To stay, to leave, to turn back, to keep going anyway.
Analysis note. Subject emphasizes lived agency over institutional celebrated decisions, implying recent exposure to selection, evaluation, or forced assignment. Tone is calm and deliberate, consistent with reflective cognition and attempted meaning preservation. A slight static swell on the word choose suggests either signal instability or heightened system filtering at sensitive phrasing. The call is not seeking response. It is depositing a principle into the void as resistance against procedural life. Disposition archived, low priority. Dial attempt 6. Node New Terror. Kepler Clinic comms spur K-02. Channel outbound. Policy flag non-essential/prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, elder, 60 plus years old, clinic staff, probable medic, counselor/operator. Emotional state, moral fatigue, fear of institutional hardening, brief break on names. Intent summary, warning against codifying fear into governance, plea to preserve humanity over procedure.
I don't think we're meant to survive this long. If you're down here, please don't let us become instructions. Don't turn our fear into policy. Don't turn our names into a procedure.
Analysis note. Subject exhibits long-duration stress and ethical exhaustion, framing survival itself as a distortion that transforms living people into operational doctrine. The repeated imperatives indicate urgency without hysteria. The single vocal break on names suggests personal loss beneath professional cadence. Signal shows compression packet loss consistent with low-priority routing. Background monitor chirp supports clinical environment. Call functions as moral deposition into prohibited channel, an attempt to leave a human boundary marker for systems that outlast humans. Disposition, archived, content flagged, governance risk. Dial attempt 7. Node new terror, quiet bay comms, spur Q-19. Channel outbound, policy flag, non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, adult, 30 to 55 years old, chronic caller, long-term isolation indicators. Emotional state, gratitude with sorrow, brief relief event. Intent summary, acknowledges prior answer event. Thanks unknown endpoint for breaking silence once.
And this is the last number that ever answered me. I don't know who you are, I don't even know if you're alive, but if you hear this, thank you for once proving the silence can break.
Analysis note. Subject references a historical instance of perceived connection, suggesting either a genuine response, an automated echo, or a misinterpreted routing artifact. Paul treats that moment as psychologically sustaining, implying prolonged deprivation of interpersonal feedback. Old line crackle and slight reverberation indicate transmission from a large, empty space. Minimal background sound supports concealment and ritual solitude. This is not a request for contact, but an offering of gratitude to the idea that contact might still be possible. Disposition archived. Anomaly tag, answer event. Dial attempt 8. Node new terror, vent trunk access comms, spur V-07, channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, around 55 years old. Final witness caller, role unknown. Emotional state, stark grief with dignity. No panic, only record keeping. Intent summary, leaves existence as the message, requests remembrance rather than contact.
I don't know if you're alive, but if you hear this, please remember that we were here.
Analysis note. Subject uses minimal language and avoids any request for rescue or reply, consistent with late-stage acceptance and collapsed expectation of assistance. Slight dropout suggests time pressure or concealment. The heavy ventilation hum implies an improvised location near infrastructure rather than a personal cabin. The call functions as a human footprint deposited into forbidden channels. Existence asserted in the smallest possible form. Disposition archived. Low bandwidth / high significance tag. Dial attempt 9. Node new terror, sleep pod cluster C-12. Channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, child/teen, 8 to 12 years old, dependent resident, family contact attempt. Emotional state, longing with controlled fear, bravery performed for self-regulation. Intent summary, seeks identity confirmation via parental voice, requests being named one more time.
Mom, they said you might still have this number. I'm not scared, okay? I just wanted to hear you say my name again one more time.
Analysis note. Subject demonstrates internalized coping language, I'm not scared, indicative of recent comms briefing or anxiety intervention. Breath catch on my name suggests emotional overload and strong attachment to identity validation through parental recognition. Clean audio with slight reverb and fabric rustle supports a small enclosed sleep pod environment and covert timing. This is not a policy breach for information transfer. It is a child attempting to stabilize the self by reaching for a voice that defined them. Disposition: quarantined, minor welfare flag, archived, copy retained. Dial attempt 10. Node New Terror, Education Block Comms Spur E-04. Channel outbound legacy dial attempt, policy flag non-essential / prohibited endpoint. Subject profile: child 8 to 10 years old, education track resident. Emotional state: hopeful denial with ache, pride under strain. Intent summary: offers proof of growth and normality, seeks approval from imagined caretaker parent.
Dad, it's me. I know you're busy down there fixing things. They told us not to call anymore, but I did my homework. I think you'd be proud.
Analysis note: subject projects the caretaker as a parental figure down there fixing things, indicating cultural narrative training that frames maintenance labor as parental care. The mention of homework functions as a bid for continuity, childhood performance offered as evidence of life persisting. Distant class tone at start suggests cool place near scheduled education routines. The wobble on proud indicates suppressed distress. This call is a small act of rebellion framed as goodness, disobedience justified by the need to be seen. Disposition: archived, education welfare tag. Dial attempt 11. Node New Terror, private cabin comms Spur P-06. Channel outbound legacy dial attempt. Policy flag non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile: parent / guardian, 30 to 40 years old. Evac survivor, loss linked. Emotional state: guilt and love. Self-disgust present. Voice break on sorry. Intent summary: retroactive apology. Retracts be brave directive and admits emotional dependence on the child.
Sweetheart, I don't know if this reaches you or just a machine. If you can hear me, I'm sorry I told you to be brave. You were already braver than I ever was. I just needed you to survive my fear.
Analysis note: subject addresses an absent dependent with intimate cadence, explicitly acknowledging the possibility of a non-human endpoint, indicating acceptance of institutional silence. The call reframes bravery as adult self-soothing, exposing guilt and moral inversion, child carrying the adult. Clean audio and enclosed room quiet imply deliberate privacy. The final shaky exhale suggests suppressed sobbing. This message is not a request for contact, but an attempt to correct the record, an apology deposited where it cannot be answered. Disposition: archived, memorial content tag. Dial attempt 12. Node New Terror, Data Services Bay D-21. Channel outbound legacy dial attempt. Policy flag non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile: archivist / IT operator, 25 to 50 years old. Storage policy enforcement role. Emotional state: defiance and grief. Controlled delivery with tremor and punishment. Intent summary: confesses protocol breach to preserve a single human trace. Frames preservation as compulsion.
They told us to delete non-essential files. Your voicemail was flagged. I copied it anyway. 2 backups failed. The last one sounds like rain now. Like the station trying to wash you out of my life. I keep it playing. I fall asleep to it like a punishment.
Analysis note: subject situates the call inside a formal deletion directive, treating policy language, non-essential, as moral violence. The act of copying is framed as resistance, but the degraded outcome, rain, becomes an object of ritualized grief, sleeping to loss as penance. Terminal beeps and fan noise confirm worksite origin. Small crackle on rain aligns with artifacted playback in proximity to archived media. This is both confession and proof. Preservation persists even when systems declare memory waste. Disposition: archived, data policy breach tag. Dial attempt 13. Node New Terror, residential locker bay L-09. Channel outbound legacy dial attempt. Policy flag non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile: young adult, 20 to 30 years old, would-be parent, crew, or resident. Emotional state, tender grief turning to shame. Brief laugh collapse on crime. Intent summary, records forbidden desire for future life. Preserves a private act of care against policy.
They said we can't have babies up here. I still folded a tiny blanket from scrap cloth. It's in my locker like a crime. I don't know who I was saving it for. I think I just couldn't accept the end of that story.
Analysis note. Subject's language indicates policy-driven fertility prohibition and internalized criminalization of hope, like a crime. The blanket functions as physical protest, care-made material when reproduction is denied. Locker latch and fabric rustle locate the call at the object itself, suggesting ritual contact with the forbidden item before speaking. The call does not seek response, it seeks witness, proof that impulse to create life survived even when the system declared it impossible. Disposition, archived, population policy sensitivity tag. I'll attempt 14. Node New Terror, Bunk Cluster B-05. Channel outbound. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, child, 4 to 6 years old, dependent resident. Emotional state, innocent pride bruised by absence. Longing for recognition. Intent summary. Offers a small milestone into silence, seeks parental witness to ongoing growth.
Mom! I learned to tie my boots today. I did it slow so I wouldn't forget. No one clapped. I still want to tell you.
Analysis note. Subject demonstrates early self-regulation, slowed repetition to prevent forgetting, suggesting routine training and procedural coping. The line, "no one clapped," indicates the absence of immediate social reinforcement, increasing reliance on an imagined parental audience. Faint shoe squeak/lace pull confirms the child is holding the boot while speaking, anchoring the call in physical practice rather than abstract longing. This is not a request for rescue, it is a child trying to keep a family script alive in an environment that has replaced family with schedules. Disposition, quarantine, child welfare tag, archived copy retained. Dial attempt 15. Node New Terror, maintenance passage comms, spur M-22. Channel outbound legacy dial attempt, policy flag non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, adult, 20 to 45 years old. High functioning staff, probable operations/shift role. Emotional state, self-punishment and craving comfort. Fear of confirmation dominant. Intent summary. Borrows hope without risking reply. Requests illusion as temporary stabilization.
If you're down there, please don't answer. I don't deserve proof. I don't deserve release. Just let it ring. Let me imagine for 5 minutes that someone is still waiting on the other side of my life. Then I will hang up and go back to being what they need.
Analysis note. Subject explicitly rejects verification and frames relief as undeserved, indicating internalized guilt and reliance on controlled fantasy for stability. The 5 minutes constraint suggests deliberate self-management under institutional pressure. Hope rationed like power. Muffled ambience and distant footsteps indicate concealment in a service passage. The sudden quiet mid-call suggests breath holding to avoid detection. This call functions as a private sedative administered through prohibited infrastructure, an attempt to remain operational by temporarily pretending someone is still waiting. Disposition, quarantined, stress risk tag, archived, exception chain incomplete. Dial attempt 16. Node, New Terror, Kepler Medbay Comms, Spur K-17. Channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, adult, 35 to 65 years old. Terminal cancer patient, ongoing palliative care. Emotional state, exhaustion with controlled anger, resentment at optimized suffering. Intent summary, rejects instrumental management framing, requests recognition as a human body, not a schedule.
They're rationing painkillers. fixing things. Don't fix me. Just let me be real. I'm tired of being managed.
Analysis note. Subject juxtaposes institutional logic with embodied reality, identifying a fracture between policy coherence and lived pain. The phrase second job frames illness as forced labor under scarcity. The appeal "don't fix me" rejects the caretaker mythos as applied to suffering, demanding dignity over optimization. Medbay ambience, equipment hum, faint oxygen/air hiss supports clinical origin. Controlled delivery with breath pauses indicates both physical strain and deliberate self-possession. Court functions as a refusal, a human insisting on personhood, where systems prefer metrics. Disposition archived, medical policy sensitivity tag. Dial attempt 17. Node New Terra, assisted living block comms spur A-06. Channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, older adult, 60 to 90 years old, cognitive decline, probable dementia. Emotional state, fear and grief with humility, confusion observed but coherent intent maintained. Intent summary, requests external memory custody, asks unknown endpoint to hold what is being lost.
Damn it. I keep forgetting the names of the corridors. And then the names of the months. Today I forgot my wife's face for a full minute. I watched it happen like a door closing. If this reaches you, remember for me, please. Hold something I'm dropping. Am I dropping or did I drop something? Oh, I don't know.
Analysis note. Subject demonstrates metacognitive awareness of decline, describing memory loss as an observable event, watched it happen, indicating an early to mid-stage with preserved insight. The door closing metaphor aligns with station architecture and implies irreversible progression. The plea shifts from contact to custodianship, outsourcing remembrance to a system assumed to be stable, even if non-human. Quiet room tone with wristband alert beep suggests supervised living environment. Call operates as a legacy transfer, the self attempting to store identity outside the failing brain. Disposition quarantined, elder welfare tag, archived copy retained. Dial attempt 18. Node New Terra, public notice halls, service stairwell S17. Channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, adult, 20 to 60 years old, bereaved, family loss event, incident cohort. Emotional state, stock collapse into sustained grief, anger at meaning making, crying audible. Intent summary, refuses comfort narrative, preserves pain as the only remaining truth.
They, posted the names after the blast. 3 pages. I read them like scripture. I read them until the letters stopped being letters. My whole family fits on one line. That line is gone. If you're still there, don't tell me it meant something. Just let it hurt.
Analysis note. The most difficult detail is not the words, which are structured, coherent, even controlled, but the audio between them. The caller tries to maintain station-appropriate calm, fails, then swallows the failure and continues anyway. The scripture framing appears again. This is not coincidence anymore. Multiple post-incident callers independently treat the casualty list as liturgy, reading not for information, but to force reality to hold still for a moment. The line "letters stopped being letters" match a known shock response pattern, semantic saturation. But here it is paired with something colder, bureaucratic formatting as a violence multiplier. A family reduced to a single line is not merely loss, it is administrative compression of human life into throughput. The system does not pause for grief. That contrast produces the real harm signal. The station's continuity becomes an audible insult, as if the habitat is training everyone to treat death as a scheduled event. The caller explicitly rejects institutional repair language, meant something, without needing to say it. The refusal is in the way they ask to be allowed pain, as if pain is the only proof that the dead were not just data. This filter is not designed to preserve emotion. It is designed to suppress it. Yet the message persists because it is non-actionable. No coordinates, no sabotage, no threat, only collapse. The policy category for this is non-essential. That label fails here. I am noting against format that the caller's grief is not disruptive noise, it is an integrity check. If the system can process this as disposable, then the system will eventually process everything as disposable. I am unable to write that more cleanly. Disposition archived, manual exception, incident cohort, do not purge. Dial attempt 19. Node New Terror, Quiet Lounge Comms Spur L-04. Channel outbound legacy dial attempt. Policy flag non-essential prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, elder, 90 to 110 years old. Pre-collapse Earth memory holder. Emotional state, reverence with devastation. Voice breaks at end. Intent summary, preserve century truth of Earth. Counters sanitized comfort imagery.
I grew up with trees you could lean against and feel them push back. They showed us Earth on the screen today. Blue, empty, polite. No smell, no insects, no noise. I didn't realize grief could be homesickness for a planet.
Analysis note. Subject contrasts tactile memory with curated simulation, highlighting the loss of sensory complexity as the core injury. The descriptor polite implies a domesticated Earth image used for behavioral soothing rather than truthful remembrance. Projector hum and distant glass clink place the call in a communal lounge immediately after a comfort session, suggesting a private response to public programming. This message functions as cultural preservation, a reminder that Earth was not an image, it is a physical relationship. Disposition archived, heritage content tag. Dial attempt 20. Node New Terror. Residential canteen comms spur C-09. Channel outbound, legacy dial attempt. Policy flag, non-essential, prohibited endpoint. Subject profile, adult, 20 to 70 years old. Moral, fragile resident, birthday event. Emotional state, fragile warmth mixed with humiliation and longing. Intent summary, records a small forbidden human ritual, wishes for ordinary life without enforced bravery.
It's my birthday. They printed my name on a ration paper, like a joke. Everyone sang quietly, so security wouldn't think it was a gathering. I made a wish anyway. I wished I could be ordinary again. Just once. Without being brave.
Analysis note. Subject describes celebration as covert activity, indicating heightened security scrutiny of gatherings and the criminalization of harmless joy. The ration rapid detail frames identity as reduced to inventory, turning recognition into humiliation. Residual muffled singing suggests the call was placed immediately after a micro-celebration, with the speaker transitioning from collective warmth to solitary confession. This message preserves a small act of humanity under constraint, the desire to be ordinary when systems demand heroism. Disposition archived, low priority, moral tag. The Transposium. Prototype habitat, quiet measurements, page 1. Transposable cubes, main 19, 1968. They describe the Transposium as a prototype habitat of future. 4 doors per room, and every room built to the same interior specification. Same smell, same light, same colors, the same arrangement. The engineer who walked me through the modular floor plan smiled with the kind of pride people usually reserve for a new kitchen or a polished machine. He said the word modular as if it meant safe. I nodded. Nodding felt easier than asking what a home becomes when any part of it can be swapped out and replaced without anyone noticing. Page 2. Move-in day. February 7th, 1971. Our room has no number, or perhaps it does and I was never shown it. I'm not sure it would matter. All the rooms look the same. Any number would do. We unpacked the way families do in hotels, as if the stay is temporary. A photo on the table, a jacket on a chair, a cup placed where I want to find it in the morning. That first night, I woke in total darkness and reached for the light switch where I remembered it to be. The ceiling lit up, the lamp stayed dark. I had the distinct feeling that the place was correcting me. Page 3. Orientation, June 2nd, 1971. They told us not to trust cardinal directions. That's the whole point, the supervisor said. Space doesn't care where you think north is. So I made my own north. A scratch in the door frame and a torn corner of tape on the door. Marks only I would notice. In the morning, the scratch was still there. The door was not. Page 4. Domestic routines, November 14th, 1971. We cling to routine as if it were scaffolding. Breakfast at the same minute. Sleep facing the same wall. Shoes lined beside the same doorway. But identical rooms are difficult to love. One woman gave names to the walls. Left wall, right wall, kind wall, cold wall. Anything to give them separate identities. Later, I saw her name on the observer's clipboard just before the door closed behind him. Page 5. The Quiet Click. March 28th, 1972. I hear a sound at night. A soft, repetitive clicking, like something metallic trying to turn its head and failing. At first, I thought it was the pipes. Then I noticed it always came when someone began crying. No one mentions it anymore. We continue pretending privacy still exists because the alternative is worse. We're not simply being watched. We're being measured. Page 6. The Sieve. September 9th, 1972. A resident asked today, "How long until we get used to this place?" The supervisor answered, "That depends on the kind of person you are." That was when I understood what this place really was. Some people keep asking questions. Some stop. The ones who stop grow quieter. The ones who keep asking grow tired. I don't think adaptation is what they're measuring. Page 7. Testing failure conditions, January 17th, 1973. They introduced what they called chronic variable stress induction into our daily routine. One door opened into a room where yesterday there had been only a wall. A light switch unlatched a door 2 rooms away. A key card worked once, then never again. During tasks, they watched our faces more closely than our hands. They weren't measuring intelligence. They weren't measuring productivity. They were measuring how long it took for a person to stop expecting fairness. Page 8. Move-out day, August 4th, 1974. They told us prototype testing was complete. We had done our part. The data, they said, was invaluable. I packed without looking at the walls, leaving behind all my tape marks and scratches. Walking out of the habitat felt like walking from a dream in which I'd slowly misplaced my own name. Outside, the sun still had warmth. It still had direction. I stood there for a long time. ELIAS, 1 of 12, Star Child. Log ELIAS, age 3 to 5. Recovered fragments, language preserved, technical phrasing is consistent with accelerated cognition. Age 3. Ambient measurement. Adults think children are fog. I am not fog. I am a sensor. I enter a room and measure it. Respiratory rate, how fast they breathe, swallowing frequency, how often they swallow. Speech latency, the delay between thought and speech. They smile too quickly. They speak praise as if it were insulation. They're trying to pad words they consider sharp. Age 3.2. Questions that are prayers. They ask questions they do not want answered. They seek confirmation that their preferred future exists, that reality agrees with them and forgives their inadequate planning. I test them. When I answer too quickly, they rephrase the question, not to learn more, but to prevent their comfort ritual from ending. Age 3.4. Constellations on a screen. They showed me a scan. Bright spots on the brainstem. The doctor called them anomalies. Another soft blanket draped over a dangerous object. Pretty constellations, I called them, because that is what they looked like. Patterns of damage arranged as something beautiful. Nobody corrected me. I understood then. They were scared. Age 3.6. Their explanation versus mine. They tried to explain my condition in child words. Little marks, tiny scars. They said they were nothing you should worry about. But I overheard the words they used when they believed I was asleep. Myelin, sheath, conduction, and degeneration. Myelin is insulation. Neurons are wires. The human body is city lit by precisely timed signals. Strip the insulation and the signals leak. They slow. They misfire. I allow the doctors to call the scars stars if it comforts them. The label does not change their nature. I am a system losing coherence. Age 3.8. Why they cry. They cry after they close my door. It is inefficient. I understand the mechanism. An ancient social signal that uses salt water to regulate pressure and temperature. They are not only mourning me, they are mourning their failure to engineer a perfect human who can outrun extinction. They cry because math remains true. Age 4. The universe does not need us. I looked up at the sky through the glass and feel nothing sacred. Space is indifferent. Its indifference is written into the laws of nature. Adults refuse to accept that. The universe does not need humans. It does not need our stories, our thoughts, our joys, or our suffering. I do not understand their panic. We are not owed continuation. They weep over a broken promise the cosmos never gave them. Age 4.2. The first betrayal. My hands tremble while my mind remains steady. This is the first betrayal. The body refusing the mind. Pain is only another signal. I do not fear signals, I fear misalignment. I know precisely what should happen, but reality diverges from expectation. My mind is the key. My body, a rusting lock. Age 4.4. Progression. The stars on the scan have multiplied. The doctors pretend they are stable, but they repeat the measurements 3 times, as though counting could stop progression. They are more childlike than I am. I can feel the deviations coming before they manifest, a delayed footstep, a word that arrives half a second late, a swallow that needs deliberate intention and focus. The map in my head still appears sharp. The body's map is beginning to blur. Age 4.6, stars in my vision. I now see bright points of light even when I close my eyes. Tiny flashes, drifting specks. The interior of my mind mirrors the sky outside. They blame stress and fatigue. In truth, it is signal noise. The pathways are damaged, sparking where they should not. My brain routes electrical signals around missing insulation and burns itself in the process. At night, the stars move closer. They look like eyes inside me, watching. Age 4.8. I can name my ending. They explained my condition carefully, with words wrapped in insulation. I do not need careful words. I can read trajectories. Progressive, neurodegenerative, and motor involvement are the words they use when they think I cannot hear them. As the myelin sheath fails, signals sputter, muscles weaken, motor pathways decay, and movement becomes negotiation. When degeneration reaches the brainstem, speech will fail, then swallowing, and finally breathing. It is a slow and predictable erasure of my being. The cruelty is not death at the end. The cruelty is the time and clarity I have to watch it approach. Age 5. They intend to copy me. I heard them outside the door using words such as replicate, standardize, deploy, and gold standard. When they think of me as a science project, it helps their sadness feel smaller. From their conversation, I have deduced the conclusion they are trying not to say aloud. They believe I am a successful prototype. Like children, they refuse rationality and call desperation a plan. They intend to scale me, hoping I will deliver salvation. They will only scale suffering. Copying me will copy more than augmented intelligence. It will copy the ability to calculate all ends. Theirs and my own. Age 5.2. Last words to humanity. I've hidden the note. Reader, if you find the gold standard, know that it is false hope. True hope cannot rest on a foundation of suffering. I was bright. I was fast. I understood too much too soon. It did not save me. It will not save you. It only made me awake to my erasure. I watched my body grow disobedient. I watched the stars multiply. I watched the future grow narrow until nothing remained. Though I say this clearly, from a child who sees the ending. Do not make more of me. Make humans who live ordinary lives. Make humans who are allowed to be confused. Make humans who can forget numbers sometimes. The universe will not mourn you. But do not become desperate. Do not become the kind of species that builds tomorrow on the suffering of children. Project CANTICLE. Songs Before Speech. Page 1, Selection Criteria. October 3rd, 1998. The committee approved the use of porcine test subjects today. The decision was framed as practical. Pigs are robust, social, trainable, and easy to breed at scale. They tolerate confinement better than primates. More importantly, no one questions the morality of the researchers quickly when the subjects arrive from a farm rather than a nursery. The official language remains defensive. Adaptive behavior study, sealed habitat labor, and interface response. But everyone in the room understood the real implication. We wanted to push living minds farther without admitting, yet, that human minds were always our ultimate target. Page 2. Good Learners. June 14th, 2001. The initial gains are impossible to dismiss. The subjects now respond to signal groups rather than isolated commands, demonstrating pattern recognition and contextual learning. They distinguish handler routines, anticipate changes in feed timing, and alter pathing after 1 or 2 failed attempts instead of 10. One learned to wait beside the correct maintenance hatch without guidance, then nudged the latch plate until the technician noticed. Another refused the wrong enclosure after only 1 exposure to the sedation room. Management likes the phrase applied intelligence. I don't. They still call them animals in the reports. That helps people sleep. Page 3. Useful across departments. February 9th, 2004. CANTICLE has begun attracting attention from too many directions. Robotics wants behavior capture. Human factors wants symbolic learning curves. The offshore teams want adaptive labor models for wet environments where standard machines fail too often. Someone from the AI group spent an hour today watching 3 subjects solve a gate sequence even after food rewards were removed entirely. He called them excellent training material. That phrase stayed with me longer than it should have. The subjects are now useful enough that nobody asks whether the program should continue. They only ask how much more can be taken from it before someone higher up notices where it leads. Page 4. Beyond Commands. August 27th, 2007. Speech didn't come. That's the clean version of events. The truer version is worse. Language appeared, only not in a form anyone could have predicted. The subjects began organizing sound into repeated melodic structures. Not noise, not mimicry, and not simple call patterns. They altered tone based on handler identity. They repeated motifs after separation. They changed pacing when a subject failed to return. We have recorded recognition themes, comfort themes, warning sequences, and what may be role assignment. The music is beautiful enough to unsettle people. If they had uttered broken human words, the program would have stopped immediately. Songs were easier to delay, easier to misfile, and easier to classify as emergent vocal behavior. For a while. Page 5. Containment adjustments, May 11th, 2009. The subjects understand more than the schedule allows. It appeared first in small behaviors, refusal when transport crates were brought in, distress before culling days even when the rotation order changed. One subject stood between a juvenile and the handler gate and wouldn't budge until sedated. Another stopped eating for 2 days after a neighboring subject was removed. Their songs now spread through the wing at night in sequence, one enclosure answering another, as if they're checking who remains. This week the new cages arrived. Not farm pens, not holding crates. Individual rolling restraint frames, spherical steel cages with narrow viewing gaps, bolt lock hatches, and enough room for a body to breathe, turn slightly, and understand it cannot escape. They were introduced as a transport safety measure for high cognition subjects. No one called them cruel. No one needed to. Officially, the new cages are a solution to mitigate emotional instability in the subjects. Unofficially, their use is the first sign the subjects know what the final rooms are for. We've started moving through the wing more quietly, and I don't think it helps. Page 6. Pattern Convergence, January 19th, 2011. The analysts completed their breakdown. Using hundreds of hours of recordings, they reduced the songs to recurring tonal clusters, pressure intervals, subject associations, and environmental triggers. We expected a vocabulary map. What we received was worse. Emotional compression. As the program continued, the songs narrowed. Less curiosity, less play, less social variation, more anticipation, more dread. More repeated response around transport events, sedation preparation, the sound of restraint cages rolling across concrete, and the emptying of enclosures. The lead analyst requested one more pass over the raw data. She didn't like what the first pass implied. We all knew she wasn't questioning the data. She was buying time. The second pass said the same thing with cleaner confidence. Page 7. Translation. March 2nd, 2011. I've heard the final report twice now, but the first hearing made me die inside. The songs aren't random grief sounds. They aren't generalized stress. The repeated sequence we kept tagging as transport distress, then culling anxiety, then terminal anticipation, carries stable meaning across subjects and contexts. It appears before sedation, before removal, before chamber preparation, before the restraint cages are rolled into place, and before the doors open on rooms from which no one returns. There's no clean way to translate it into human language without sounding theatrical, but the meaning was simple enough that everyone in the room understood it immediately. No one spoke for nearly a minute afterwards. They were asking us to kill them. Not later, not kindly, not abstractly. Just end this. End this. End this. One of the younger staff walked out before the presentation was over. Nobody followed him. Page 8. Termination order, July 18th, 2012. Project CANTICLE is closed. The public filing cites limited deployment value, unstable communication output, and poor command standardization. The true reasons won't survive in any official archive worth the name. Too much useful data came from the program for that. The findings have already been partitioned, rerouted, and absorbed into later classified work under cleaner labels. The subjects are gone. The wing is empty. The restraint frames remain stacked against the far wall, too valuable to discard quickly, and too revealing to leave where anyone can see them. Audio archives are under review for selective retention. Some staff have been reassigned, others requested transfer. One asked whether the recording should be destroyed. The answer was no. That answer frightened me more than all the others. CANTICLE is over, that's what the order says. But what it taught them is not over. It's still moving forward, but without the songs attached. RHOMBICUBOCTAHEDRON. First in, no second wave. Page 1. Qualification run. May 12th, 2068. Pico Moses Field Optics Test Log. Unit. Photodrone RHOMBICUBOCTAHEDRON 2000. Status. Pass. Qualification completed under the following conditions. Narrow corridor drift, standing water reflection, ladder well hover, condensation interference, and low light interior imaging. Hover correction remained smooth throughout, optics recovered focus after spray exposure. Return to operator behavior remained within acceptable tolerances. The unit's compact size and quiet movement were noted as advantageous for occupied interiors. Test staff recorded lower human stress response relative to larger maintenance models. Approved uses remained practical. Route checking, access verification, visual assistance, and forward inspection in spaces too narrow, flooded, or fragile for larger systems. Page 2. Useful in tight places. August 3rd, 2070. Coastal Maintenance Review. Support Systems. Unit Class. RHOMBICUBOCTAHEDRON 2000. Deployment Review confirmed field utility beyond the original design scope. The unit successfully entered collapsed side corridors, inspected partially blocked ladder shafts, recorded leak damage above unstable flooring, and confirmed hatch viability before crews committed personnel. Operator note: always send the eye first. Routing language was subsequently expanded. The model remained classified under support and inspection, but additional tags were approved. Condition verification, human presence detection, and scene documentation. No objections were recorded. The model continued to reliably perform. Performance remained easier to justify than response. Page 3. Condition before response, February 9th, 2072. Field operator log, Sector 4, launch time, 6:14 AM. Original task: inspect upper intake corridor break, observe practical use, verify whether anyone remains inside before committing a full team. The unit returned with interior footage showing blocked stairwells, flood height, failed utility housing, and multiple occupied rooms. Human figures were clearly visible in several frames. Central requested higher resolution follow-up images of door markings, wall faults, and structural drift. No request followed for evacuation, supply relay, or medical transfer. On paper, the drone remained a support unit. In practice, it was answering a different question. It wasn't asking, how could we help? But what was still there? Page 4. Fog Habitat Pass, 2074. Unscheduled survey entry, route reconstruction. Recovered route data confirms a short pass hover above habitat node 06-1.25 in the fog belt. Duration remained under 1 minute. Captured imagery includes roof corrosion, improvised desalination repair using scrap and wire, one adolescent subject outside, one adult subject lying prone, and one additional subject near the shelter opening. Multiple upward-facing gestures toward the unit are visible in the frame sequence. Occupancy was flagged, urgency was not. No relief dispatch appears in the route archive. A journal later recovered from habitat node 06-1.25 described the encounter more simply. Last week, a mysterious drone hovered over the habitat for a minute before speeding off and vanishing into the rolling fog. One resident believed help was finally coming, another said nothing. Both records were preserved. Neither changed the outcome. Page 5, model note / occupancy. Recovered internal segment. Onboard assistance model self-annotation buffer. Task protocol. Approach, scan, return, report. Scan results. Multiple human subjects detected, one prone, one seated nearby, one standing with intermittent wall contact. All subjects directed hand gestures upward toward the unit. Point of interest classifications. Water damage, unstable structure, failed utility, human presence. Action test. Approach vector adjusted, hover hold completed, optical refocus executed, return route preserved. Unresolved. Waiting, resignation, grief, final request. Does prone indicate rest, injury, or end state? Archive recommendation. Human presence noted, follow-up desirable, assistance probability unknown, status, no second task assigned. Page 6, model note, interior stillness, recovered late segment. Onboard assistance model, self-annotation buffer. Scan results, open window, watermarked wall, table, meal on table, cup on table, active ceiling light source, one motionless human subject on floor. Action test 1, no subject response to optical signal, no subject response to audio prompt, no subject response to proximity drift. Action test 2, contact protocol repeated, results unchanged. Working interpretation, environment imageable, human presence confirmed. Subject remains available for later contact. Waiting state may continue. Model conflict. Room arranged for life. Life activity not confirmed. Presence and possibility no longer align. Follow-up state. No urgency assigned. No retrieval task. No care task. No relay task. Archive only. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave it for the logs read in this episode. Going to have a little chat about these because these were... A lot of these were based off of the new updates that we've had recently, and some of the stuff in particular with certain areas of the game. Obviously, spoilers. I'm guessing you wouldn't be listening to this if you haven't got this far or you're not conscious of spoilers anyway, and you're like wanting to know more about the lore. Those next three, the Project Jonah, the Black Corridor leak, and the brief music, those are all the current update 5 notes. So we've now currently read everything up to update 4, including 3.5 and 3 and all those before it. For some reason on mine, I've got a double ELIAS, but they are the same. It just doesn't have them all complete. So I'm not sure if, because I didn't read them, because I was waiting for my dial attempts for so long, that I've bugged and I've got 2 ELIAS notes. I'm not sure if you do. Let me know if you're playing this and you have 2 ELIAS notes as well. That was obviously all about the Star Child. But yeah, I do have the full set of ELIAS. I've just got some extras for some reason. Not too sure why. This word, RHOMBICUBOCTAHEDRON, I can't say it now. I've said it too much. Really hard word to say, and saying it, I've said it more than enough. So I'm just going to call it the Rumby one. Interesting, we got a few new kind of notes to some of the older ones. Jacob's Stars, this was the one where obviously they get a they're just a family living abandoned on a, you know, on an island or a habitat presumably in an old greenhouse and stuff, and it's from the father's perspective, I think, and obviously the wife dies over time. The son finds the crashed rocket, basically the like finds a care package essentially. The stuff inside it makes him just wander off essentially, and wasn't food in there, it was all the cryogenically preserved human seeds, and he wandered off. And obviously this is then continuing from Jacob's perspective, from the son's perspective, and you know, he's looking at the seeds and studying it and wondering all about it and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not sure if this is, like, I'm open to what you guys interpret this one as, because obviously he's then found the letters and he's interpreted these as a blueprint, a recipe, and almost like he found like Jacob found one of the early, or maybe the exact same, like Star Child seed, the gold standard, as it were, that we found. Maybe that's the one that he had as well. And, you know, again, do not let this reach the stars. It will be spread, it will be copied, preserve, or end it here. And those were the three options. You could preserve it, you could keep it in a chest, you could end it by basically scrapping it, or you could create a human out of it, create the Star Child, and send the Star Child up to, presumably, the space station, you know, the colony. Which, obviously, my preferred choice was to end it here and dispose of it. But obviously in my playthrough on the Let's Play series, I need to show you guys both options of that. So we disposed of it, saw what was said with that. Can't remember what episode number that was now, but we did that. And then obviously later on, we took it with us. We reloaded our save, took it with us, and we did send the Star Child up to the stars as well. And we got a little comment of maybe we shouldn't have done that. And it's definitely implied that the Star Child, and I agree with this to some degree, having a perfect human is a recipe for disaster. Not only does it spell problems for the other humans we send up that aren't perfect humans, if it becomes some sort of purist humanity thing that goes up there as well, but then you've also got the whole, you know, implications of playing God and just because we can, should we, and all that kind of stuff. So very interesting, but that's what I was kind of interpreting out of this, is that he found either the exact same one we had, or he found like versions of other Star Child seeds, essentially, that were going, but obviously they crashed and didn't quite make it. And we'll have more about the Star Child stuff later on. We got a little bit on the final Anthem as well, which was basically the music that sounds when you send the rocket off. It's the composer's kind of classical music, and this was just an extra note, just adding that after he did this kind of rendition, he died 2 weeks later. But obviously the music lives on every day, every time a rocket goes off and comes back. That is the sound that's played. The FS-204-72, this is the FS-204 is our ship, if I remember correctly. It is our ship, and it's basically just a set of different kind of what would you call it, like reports. And this is obviously doing the other 10-year mark. It's another caretaker, essentially just double checking if anything's changed, or essentially what reads like a caretaker. Again, note the year 2104, and yeah, essentially all these loops that just happen over and over, basically, if there's nothing to do. So not sure if this is a different caretaker, because it is caretaker 731. I don't know what our caretaker unit is, like what our number is. 732 maybe. Not sure if this is the one before us, but or maybe they're still sleeping somewhere and they are yet to wake. So not too sure about that one, but another little extra one just thrown in there. And then we kind of went on to the new ones, which like I said, I kind of spread. Where are we? Dial attempt. Where is it? There it is. So the dial attempt, I kind of kept this one as a kept their transcripts intact so you could listen to the actual audio, because it does give you that option there. And these were all a variety of messages that seemed like they were just sent into the void and somehow reached our phone. And I don't think on the ship, and I'm not sure if it was like, you know, it seems like time between each one. It's not like we had 20 back-to-back days of phone calls. Not sure what's causing them to come through our phone and what's happening with that, if there's something that triggers that in particular. But these are 20 different messages from different people up on the station. And if you're to draw like a correlation or like a core point across all 20 of them, it is the systemization of humanity and the removal of humanity, essentially, in the schedules and the many mentions of like regulation and like training them to be more resistant, to be less emotional, less empathetic, all that kind of stuff. And the analysis note almost shows like awareness to some degree as well. I'm not sure if this is meant to be our analysis or like ourselves, the AI's analysis, you know, the lady that speaks to us, or if it is just someone else's analysis. They almost seem like they are robotic, but there are certain moments where they're like, I think it was like note 18 or something, where they were like, wait, I think it was note 18, where they said, yeah, the most difficult detail is not the words which are structured, coherent, or even controlled, but the audio between them. And they basically disagree that it should be kind of removed and suppressed and, you know, should be formatted, and that it's disposable. They basically disagree with that, and they basically say that if we mark even this as disposable, then where do we draw the line? Everything will be marked as disposable at that point. And so it almost intervenes, so shows some level of awareness. But like I said, I don't read this as someone who's human. I don't know what you guys think about that. I almost read it like it is like an AI that has seen and heard a lot and is learning, or is a robot with some empathy skills, albeit very low, but it does have that stuff in there. So I don't know, very curious messages though. Very cool voice acting. Would love to see more of this as well, like more notes mixing the written with the audio as well. Thought that was brilliant. Not necessarily a fan. This is one of the reasons that hold up this episode so much, because we went like 4 or 5 episodes without getting one. They're meant to be one a day, but then like one a day that you boot up the game, not in-game days. But sometimes you get 2, sometimes you get none. I had a theory that they didn't happen when you loaded the game and you weren't at the boat. I'm not sure, but I had a few where I just couldn't get any, so it delayed this a little bit because I didn't want to really do this. Obviously, the stack transfer and the skimmer and the platform run at Aristotle and field notes, we did all that in the previous episode because we did have those. Transposium, we've now got. This one obviously was the puzzle room basically that we saw. You know, where you got all the red buttons, the shark behind the door, all that kind of stuff. We've heard notes of that before with like the modular living space, and this was basically that they were basically test subjects. And I think there was another note. I can't remember quite what that note was. I think it was Aristotle. It's been a while since I read this one because I think I did that episode in March, and we're now on the 1st of July that I'm recording this. But I think this one is the one, yeah. And I think at the end of this one, yeah, the door closed. Like, it was basically like it wasn't required anymore. The whole place was repurposed, and the facility was no longer being used for an experiment or even storage. Because I think in this one they said this was the museum, and then I think this one, yeah, they packed it there, and then transposable storage facility, and it essentially is why it's got the art in there as well as the living quarters, because I think after they were evacuated, it became a storage place for art and fine works of art and stuff like that. So cool to see that crossover. Obviously we saw the Transposium from the perspective of someone who was in it as the experiment, and that they weren't measuring, you know, capability or anything like that. They were just measuring, like it says here, how long it took for a person to stop expecting fairness, testing limits of humanity, essentially. Now, ELIAS is very interesting. At first, I was thinking ELIAS was maybe mention of like the other child that died earlier on, which I think is in some of the earlier notes. But this one is, if not the first, is one of the star childs that have been created. And we don't really get an age, like a year of when this happens. But we know through this that they look like a child, but they have like an AI crossover, essentially, which I think is linked to the notes, again, kind of my own piecing together here, so do let me know in the comments below if you disagree. But I think, was it Elena or was it Elena's promise? Yeah, Anna's grandmother. So Anna, the mother, and she loses her child, doesn't she? Which I think is at the very beginning. It's one of the earlier ones, isn't it? Dolly Project. Yeah, Anna is the girl, yeah. And the mother and the grandmother, yeah. So I think, yeah, Anna is the start of the Star Child program, because I'm pretty sure in the Elena's notes, and again, Elena's promise, they mention something about not flesh, not machine, something in between. And basically asking if stars ever die. There's a lot of crossover between this and essentially, I think, Elena still working in the lab, essentially putting, we don't know what the grandmother's called, I don't think, but the mother's Elena, the daughter's Anna. Elena's a scientist and is trying to save her child's mind, Anna's mind, with AI or computer kind of functionality as well. And I think that leads to the Star Child, and maybe a bit of this kind of the Chen-Martinez Codex, which is all about the different, I think that's said here as well somewhere. I can't remember which one that is now. But basically the different Chen-Martinez thing is the different things we have, like wisdom and all that kind of stuff. Creativity, the 10 stat points basically. So very intrigued by this one, because this seems to piece together that it looks like a child, maybe acts like a child, but inside it's cognitive understanding. It understands the big words. It almost, at the age of 3, is almost looking down and calling other humans childish. And it understands, like, to have this log, nobody corrected me, I understood that, like, to have this log and this perspective, it must be way more advanced than the age suggests, and also how it outputs. Obviously, not perfect, defective, you could say, that it obviously has, I'm not sure what condition it has, if it's like a version of like MS or something like, or Parkinson's, where it seems to be that the body neurons and stuff like that are slowly shutting down, obviously like brain related, and will eventually lead to the body failing and not breathing and stuff, but the mind is very strong. Quite an interesting one, because they are then actually saying, well, this isn't the end of the world. This is, we've got proof of concept here, and we can build on this, and we can make sure that maybe the Star Children don't have this, as they intend to copy them. So, yeah, intriguing. I'm not sure if this means that all Star Children would be afflicted by this, or if it's just a case of there's a good number that will suffer from this, and others that might not, and maybe that percentage is quite high. I'm not too sure. Or maybe they were able to replicate this so that future Star Children didn't have this issue. But either way, it's the kind of barbaric side of things, that these are 5-year-old children still that are being, or 3-year-olds to 5-year-olds that are getting experimented on as well. So yeah, I think that's definitely, in my mind, linked to the Elena and Anna side of things, as well as the Chen-Martinez stuff, and obviously proof that they were reproducing humans in this manner, like what we do with the pods, while they're still here on Earth as well. And then Project Canticle, very dark, very, very dark, and obviously is to do with the Project Canticle area where we saw in our Let's Play playthrough, and you had those little cage pens that were like pig-shaped, and if you used the drone, you'd be able to then see the pigs in their little cages. And we picked up a couple of those porcine like speaker things that they were playing musical notes on, and obviously they couldn't have words, but they were playing songs, and when those songs were deciphered, it was basically just saying over and over again, kill them, basically, just begging for their death. They'd rather die. They're like getting tortured and all that stuff, and just end it, and begging, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, very dark, and it just gets closed, just gets canned. Obviously they get what they learn out of it, and some of it goes into other stuff, some of it is classified and all that stuff as well, but it is technically over. But yeah, very, very dark on that side of things. And this one I'm not going to say again. This is the photodrome, this little drone unit, and does show that it's got some level of like AI and its own cognitive function, because the last 2 notes are self-annotations of it, basically, from the sounds of it, finding either dead humans, or I think page 5 is finding humans, and just not sure if they're hurt or injured or anything like that, but they are alive, it seems. The 6th one, it sounds like that human is like unconscious or dead, probably. And again, it's like it's got a room arranged for life, but the life activity can't be confirmed, so it's kind of at odds with each other. But essentially showing that it was used, the photodrome was used as a repair and reconnaissance tool. Go in, find if there's any people alive, but quite importantly, not as a rescue drone, but more just a case of, well, how did they survive? Who survived? What's the structure like? Data collection, and that humans are just part of that, and they're not, we're not saving them. So again, like with all the other notes we've read so far, and I'm really looking forward to reading the next 3 once we've explored this update a bit more, found some more stuff, and got those maxed out. We'll do that in the next episode. But yeah, really, like with the others, it's got that dark, harrowing, yeah, it's just really, really sad, isn't it? So that's my thoughts on it. Little bit of a sum up, and sorry for the delay between the previous episode and this one, but I just wanted to make sure that we've got all the dial attempts, and then I could do all the ones that we could do, and we're all kind of up to date now. All the logs are now up to date up to the end of episode 4, and then Project Jonah and onwards, those are update 5 ones, which have just come out in the last week, so still working through those, but we'll have another video covering those soon. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that one. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because like I said, this one's really really dark at times as well, and I like that they have gone and added some little bits to some of the other what's it called, like some of the other notes, like Jacob stars and stuff like that. So quite like that they're still adding some stuff to it, and like I said, I really like the audio elements within the dial attempts sequences as well, so pretty cool. And what I also liked is that some of the things, like I think it might be Marika Solberg's one, the Genesis adaptation unit, and talking about the initial containment for anomalies, this is basically where we've just been in the Let's Play, in that underwater theta research lab, where they were testing on the samples of the biogenesis, essentially. I think there might have been another one, might have been biomatter logs as well, the harvesting all the biomatter and all the collections there and all that stuff as well, refining it to really, and you can see here, I don't know if they've updated that, 25 kilograms of high density biomatter, which interestingly is the new kind of weight limit for biomatter, and I'm not sure if that was always there. I'd have to go back to the episode that I recorded this one in, but they have in the update 5 increased the weight of biomatter, so it actually does fit with that now. But like I said, not sure if they just amended that or if that was always there. But yeah, what do you guys think? Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you guys being here. And like I said, we do have the Let's Play where we're playing through this, so if you haven't watched any of that, or you missed out on a few episodes and you want to catch up, I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description below. But thank you so much, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.